I'm Captain Tori Myers, and at 32 years old, I thought I had learned how to handle pressure, criticism, and disappointment. But nothing prepared me for the moment my own mother stood in my childhood bedroom holding a blue dress and asked me not to wear my military uniform to my brother's wedding because she believed it would embarrass the family in front of important people. For years, I had been the daughter who stayed quiet whenever my achievements were ignored, the sibling who attended family events without expecting recognition, and the person everyone assumed would always sacrifice her feelings to keep the peace. I had spent more than a decade carrying that role without complaint, convincing myself that staying silent was easier than fighting for a place in a family that never seemed interested in understanding me. My military career had never been a secret, yet nobody in my family ever asked about it. They knew I served, but they treated it like a temporary phase rather than a life of responsibility, sacrifice, and leadership. Whenever neighbors asked what I did, my mother would quickly change the subject, as if my uniform represented something she wished people wouldn't notice. Unlike my family, the Marines I served beside knew exactly who I was. They knew my strengths, my failures, and the difficult moments we had survived together. Those men and women had become the closest thing to a true family I had ever known because they valued character over appearances and loyalty over social status. When my younger brother Wes announced his engagement to Sloane Whitfield, the entire family celebrated as if they had won a prize. Sloane came from a wealthy and respected family, and my mother treated the wedding as the most important social event of her life. She spent months planning every detail and constantly reminded everyone how important it was to make the right impression. During our conversations, she showed genuine interest in my life and asked thoughtful questions nobody in my family had ever bothered to ask. By the end of one call, she told me she was glad Wes had a sister like me, and those simple words meant more than she could have imagined because I had not heard anything similar from my own relatives in years. 2 days before the wedding, my mother entered my room carrying a beautiful blue dress and gently suggested that I wear it instead of my military uniform. She claimed the wedding guests were sophisticated, people who might find the uniform distracting. But beneath her careful words was a message I had heard my entire life. Hide who you are, so everyone else can remain comfortable. After she left, I sat alone staring at the dress and my uniform hanging beside it. One represented acceptance and invisibility, while the other represented truth. I knew wearing the dress would make the weekend easier, but I also knew it would mean once again pretending that the most important part of my life was something to be hidden. That evening, I found comfort in a small challenge coin I carried everywhere. The coin had belonged to a young Marine named Danny Brennan, a 19-year-old whose courage and kindness left a permanent mark on everyone who knew him. Years earlier, he had placed that coin in my hand for luck, and after a tragic mission took his life, I promised myself I would carry it every day in his memory. The next morning, my brother approached me with a nervous smile and asked if I could avoid wearing the uniform for just one day. He insisted he wanted everything to go smoothly and said he hoped I could simply be normal for the wedding. Hearing those words hurt more than I expected because they revealed how little he truly knew about the life I had spent years building. Later that day, family members gathered for lunch and the conversation eventually turned toward me. One relative questioned my future. Another suggested I find a real career. And several others treated my service as if it were an unusual hobby rather than a profession. I sat quietly through all of it, realizing once again how comfortable they had become with dismissing everything I had accomplished. That afternoon, while standing alone in my childhood bedroom, I finally tried on the blue dress. Looking into the mirror, I saw someone polished, pleasant, and completely unrecognizable. The reflection staring back at me looked like the version of myself my family preferred. A version without edges, history, sacrifice, or identity. Just when I was convincing myself to wear the dress and avoid conflict, my phone buzzed with a message from my Aunt Diane. She sent a screenshot from a family group chat that included everyone except me, and the words on that screen changed everything I believed about my place in the family. The moment I finished reading, I understood that the choice before me was no longer about clothing. It was about whether I would continue allowing other people to decide who I was. The screenshot revealed a conversation that felt like a betrayal written in plain text. My mother had instructed relatives not to encourage me to wear my uniform, describe the military as embarrassing, and arrange for me to sit at a table in the back of the reception hall where I would attract as little attention as possible. What hurt most was seeing that everyone had read the messages and almost nobody objected. For a long time, I sat silently on the edge of my bed, reading those words again and again. Tears or heartbreak, but what I felt instead was clarity. The illusion that my family simply misunderstood me disappeared, replaced by the realization that they understood perfectly and had chosen to minimize me anyway. The wedding day arrived bright and beautiful, and despite everything, I attended the ceremony quietly in simple clothing. I sat near the back and watched my brother exchange vows with the woman he loved. For those few moments, none of the family drama mattered because I genuinely wanted him to have a joyful beginning to his new life. After the ceremony ended and guests moved toward the reception hall, I slipped into a private room where my uniform waited inside a garment bag. Standing in front of the mirror, I carefully put on each piece, reminding myself that this uniform represented years of service, responsibility, sacrifice, and memories that deserved respect. For the first time in my life, I chose authenticity over comfort. Just as I prepared to leave the room, my mother walked in and immediately froze when she saw me wearing the uniform. She pleaded with me to change, insisting I would embarrass the family and ruin everything she had worked so hard to build. When she demanded that I blend in one last time, I calmly looked her in the eye and told her that I was not the embarrassing one. The reception hall was already filled with guests when I entered through a side door. My plan was simple. Walk quietly to my assigned table, enjoy the evening, and avoid unnecessary attention. I was not seeking recognition or confrontation. I merely wanted to exist openly as the person I truly was. As I crossed the room, conversations began to fade and people slowly turned their heads. Among the guests stood an elderly retired Marine who immediately recognized the significance of the medal displayed on my uniform. Rising to his feet with remarkable dignity, he called out in a strong voice that a Silver Star recipient had entered the room. The room fell completely silent as the veteran raised a formal salute toward me. Instinctively, I returned it, and within seconds, something extraordinary happened. Other veterans scattered throughout the ballroom stood as well, some saluting and others standing proudly at attention, creating a powerful moment of respect that no one in attendance would ever forget. Many guests did not fully understand the medal's significance, but they understood the emotion filling the room. The silence became a tribute not only to my service, but also to every sacrifice represented by the uniform. For the first time in my life, strangers openly honored something my own family had spent years trying to hide. The Whitfield family patriarch stepped forward and warmly welcomed me. He explained that generations of his family had served in the military, and that honoring those who wore the uniform was a tradition they considered sacred. In a single moment, my mother's assumptions collapsed because the very people she had tried to impress valued exactly what she had spent years dismissing. Trying to recover, my mother suddenly announced how proud she was of me and attempted to claim credit for my accomplishments. But the room had already witnessed the truth, and no carefully chosen words could rewrite a decade of neglect. When she quietly begged me not to embarrass her, I simply reminded her that she had spent years treating my service like something that should remain hidden. Wanting the attention focused on what truly mattered, I reached into my pocket and held up Danny Brennan's challenge coin. I explained that many achievements are never earned alone, and that every honor I carried belonged equally to those who sacrificed beside me. The room listened in complete silence as I spoke briefly about the young Marine whose memory I carried every day. Afterward, my brother approached me with tears in his eyes and admitted something he should have said years earlier. He confessed that he had never taken the time to ask about my experiences, my service, or the sacrifices behind the uniform. His apology was simple and sincere, and for the first time I felt that he genuinely saw me as a person rather than a family role. Later that evening, my father quietly handed me a worn envelope containing an official letter that had recognized my military service years before. He admitted he had hidden it away instead of standing up for me when it mattered. While his honesty did not erase the past, it marked the beginning of a more truthful relationship between us. The weeks and months after the wedding brought changes nobody expected. Some relatives reached out genuine curiosity. My relationship with my brother slowly improved, and the Whitfield family welcomed me warmly into their lives. Most importantly, I stopped apologizing for who I was and stopped shrinking myself to make other people comfortable. The greatest lesson from that weekend was simple. The people truly worth impressing never asked me to become smaller. The only people uncomfortable with my identity were those who refused to understand it, and their discomfort was never my responsibility to carry. From that day forward, I chose to stand proudly in my own truth, no matter who approved.